Hello there YouTube, my name is Chuggy and today it is my pleasure to bring you my first gameplay from Battlefield 3 Aftermath. Today guys I am playing some Scavenger on Epicenter, and today guys I'll be giving you my initial impressions of the latest piece of Battlefield 3 DLC. So really guys, what I'll be talking about is the DLC. I've played about 3 or so hours of it now, the maps, the new weapon being the Crossbow, and how this piece of DLC really is going to really potentially change up the way that you will see Battlefield 3 being played on your platform. So, to briefly talk about what you'll actually be watching during this video, basically this is me playing Scavenger, as I've mentioned. This is the new game mode included with Aftermath, and really the best way I could describe this actually is a cross between Gunmaster and Conquest Domination. Now primarily the game is driven by tickets a la Conquest, and it's the same old mechanic of you both teams have a set number of tickets, and the winner is whoever has the most tickets left once the enemy has depleted all theirs. And the capture radius, the capture times of the actual points which you're playing for are basically the same as Conquest Domination. So very quick capture times, a couple of them dotted around the map, mainly in relatively high traffic areas. So obviously you have the PTFO component of the game mode there. Now the Gunmaster element comes in the way that the weapons are played out. The twist, if you will, in Scavenger is that all you start with at the start of the game and every time you spawn is with your handgun of choice and a grenade. After that, you have nothing. You have to scavenge it from the battlefield, and the actual weapons on the battlefield will vary, will change, depending on what's going on. So, the way that the weapons work in Scavenger is basically there are spawn points set around the map, and on top of that there are different types of weapon obviously that you can pick up, and I'm not talking SMGs like machine guns, assault rifles. There are different levels. There are 3 levels of weapon in Scavenger. You have level 1, level 2 and level 3, and basically the real difference between level 1, 2 and 3 is the number of attachments that the weapons have on them. So level 1 you'll have no attachments, level 2 you might have 1 or 2 perhaps, and level 3 you'll have 3 or so. However, the trick is, if you want the weapons with the most attachments, and normally the way that the weapons are configured, the more attachments the easier it is to use, you have to put yourself at risk. The level 3 weapons only spawn in the high traffic areas, and this is where the twist in the tail comes in. Are you willing to risk yourself to potentially get a better weapon? The level 1 and level 2 weapons kind of spawn at less high traffic areas, let's say. So you might see the level 1 weapons right out on the outskirts of the map, level 2 if you're kind of a bit more in towards the middle, and then the level 3 weapons right where the action is going on. So you kind of have to really evaluate, I could perhaps get this potentially worse off weapon, it's less of a risk, but I might get a better weapon, get a few more kills, play the objective a bit better if I'm able to grab this saw with all this nice stuff, bipod, ACOG, etc. on it. So you really have to analyse as you go what would be the best decision depending on what's going on around you, so you kind of really do have to think on your feet. Now the other nice part about this is you have no choice in what weapons you get to pick up. The weapon spawning, although it's in levels, are random, so you might go to a level 2 spawn point. At one point it might have a shotgun, but next time you go back it might have an SMG. So you really have to be kind of a jack of all trades, or at least acknowledge and realise how you have to use each type of weapon in game to get the best out of it. So you really do have a nice test of players' sort of ability to use the various weapons within the game, their ability to tactically assess what they need to do, and all of this going on while they have to play the objective. So it's a real sort of mashup of things you have to do all at the same time, and it's very fast paced and a lot of fun. And certainly it's a really nice take on the Battlefield formula. Frankly, if Close Quarters had included this game mode, I think a lot more people would have enjoyed playing Close Quarters maps, all I'm going to say. Anyway, let's mention the maps quickly. So today I am playing on Epicenter, and you might go, well, from what I've seen it doesn't seem all that large. And you'd be right. For Scavenger, what the game does is it basically uses a fenced off area, a relatively small area. Scavenger is an infantry-only game mode, and there are no vehicles, so there's no need for massive roads or whatnot. So, yeah, it's relatively small areas, but the 4 maps you get with a piece of DLC, once you play them in Conquest, for instance, the more traditional game modes, are very respectable in size. We're talking bigger than Caspian Border, maybe even 1 or 2 the size of Operation Firestorm in terms of playable area. Plenty big enough for your 64 players, say. So you have 4 maps with the DLC. This is Epicenter. I've already mentioned this, and you might have recognised from the loading screen that there's the crane, which has hit a building. It's been mainly focused, or featured even, in the trailers which DICE have released to this point of the DLC. And on top of that, you have 3 other maps. You have Markaz Monolith, which is basically a map all set around a destroyed skyscraper thanks to the earthquake. And I should actually mention this while I think about it. So all the maps are set in a post-earthquake environment, and some of them, even as you play them, will have sort of aftershocks sort of happen as you're playing. And when that happens, not only do you sort of shake around, you lose your aim, but you then sort of have to reassess where you are. You might have bits of building fall on you, that kind of thing. I have been killed by some masonry falling down after an earthquake, so you have to keep an eye out for buildings and things. So all of these maps have got sort of an earthquake damaged feel, but the thing is with all of them is that they are relatively, actually speaking, different. So Markaz Monolith, as I was kind of saying before, I kind of went on that tangent, it's set around a skyscraper. The earthquake has taken quite a bit of it out, and basically all that's really left are the main sort of 4 corners, as well as a few levels inside which you can access. But basically, a lot of the fighting happens in and around this skyscraper and the surrounding buildings, etc. So you've got a relatively urban environment, but it's fairly open for an urban environment, I would say. And you could fly helicopters through the city streets, the scout helicopters. And actually, I'll mention this now: the scout helicopters on these maps take a whole new role. Given that, well, for instance, in Conquest you'll have vehicles like Abrams's, like, well, the 3 new vehicles. You've got sort of slightly modified Vodniks, Humvees, and an armoured van. They will do serious damage to infantry, especially in urban environments where, you don't have that many places to hide. An alleyway is an alleyway. Or a street is a street. Suddenly the scout helicopters with their miniguns, with their designated missiles or laser-guided missiles, they can take those vehicles out pretty sharpish. So suddenly the scout helicopters have a lot of use. They're nimble, they're agile, they can fly through these tight environments really easily, and they are a real threat. They certainly are a lot of fun to fly in, especially the tight spaces, and yeah, it really does put a new emphasis on how to fly the scout helicopters. Anyway, I digress. So yeah, Markaz Monolith. Urban but open. You then have Talar Market, and this is basically set in a marketplace, but it's not like a marketplace you've seen before in Battlefield 3. It's a marketplace where, well, I would say it's, I don't know, I'd describe it as Egyptian. That's the wrong way of putting it, it's Arabic, but the best way I can describe it is think Assassin's Creed. Think sort of Assassin's Creed Revelations in terms of the architecture and things like this. You've got lots of fairly small buildings, but very tiny alleyways. There's a lot of verticality. So for instance, you can get up onto the roofs, you can hop around the roofs over the alleyways. That particular map, it's set on a slight hill, so if you control the top of the hill, you can pretty easily repel attackers if you get the placement of your players right. But the fact that you have these tight alleyways, you've got these high roofs, you've got staircases, you've got all sorts, lots of verticality on that map, which makes it a real challenge. That, and you have some open areas around a market as well. A great map, easily my favourite out of the DLC. You then have Epicenter, which is this map, which I won't talk too much about, but then you have Azadi Palace, and this is again kind of a new interesting experience. So half the map is urban, like Epicenter here, but then you have half of it which is a palace, which has been pretty much wiped out by the earthquake. So you have kind of a mix of open, a la Markaz Monolith, and it really brings the two together quite nicely. You can either fight for the open area or you can do the infantry combat, so you get the nice choice. So all the maps bring a little bit something different to the game, and they all play really nicely in Conquest and Scavenger. I've played those 2 modes at this point, and certainly it has brought a whole new sort of aspect to urban warfare, which at this point, when we think urban in Battlefield, we probably think something like Grand Bazaar. These maps are similar but not at the same time, so it's really nice sort of new maps, new challenges. Now, to go with these new maps and new challenges, you have a new weapon, and it's the crossbow, and you can see me using one here. This is the crossbow scoped. This has equipped the 7x sight, which you'll probably be familiar with if you use the SV98 or the SVD, and I'm firing, if you will, the standard bolt. Now, the best way I can describe this crossbow is as a sniper rifle which fires a knife. And you might kind of go, well, that sounds pretty daft. Or you might also say, well, that is what it is. It fires a dart. But hear me out on this. So basically, the crossbow is a marksman's tool. You get one shot, very high damage, one-shot kill, up to 15 meters. I'll get to that in a second. But it's multi-purpose. It's both offensive and defensive at the same time. So with the crossbow, you get a multitude of bolt options. You have the standard bolt, which is what you have here in Scavenger, as we have a little bit of an earthquake here, I think, or an aftershock. You have the standard bolt, which I'm using here, but you have 3 other types. You have the balanced bolt, which is more the sniper's, if you will, bolt. Not so much, it's not so affected by bullet drop or bolt drop, and I believe it does a little more damage over range compared to the standard bolt. You have the explosive bolt, which has a small explosive charge strapped to it, which on contact with something explodes. Not too much damage in terms of the explosion, pretty small splash area, but does some explosive damage. Then finally you have the sensor bolt, which has like a recon tugs unit attached to it, and when it lands it emits a pulse, and anyone within 10 meters of that pulse will be put on the radar, a la the tugs. Now these options really do, and I really can see this really change Battlefield 3, the way it's played at the moment. The crossbow itself is a gadget item. It's not a primary, it's not a secondary. So you could be running this instead of the medkit as the assault, instead of the ammo pack as the support, or instead of the tug set as the recon. And just running with the recon example, suddenly you can do a lot more. So for instance, with the explosive bolt, once you've unlocked it, you can attack vehicles again, or you can keep them off from you compared to previously. So if you think back to Bad Company 2, you had C4 as a recon. You'd be able to attack a tank and destroy it potentially. Now I doubt you'll be able to do that with the crossbow, the explosive crossbow bolt, but easily you should be able to perhaps make a tank driver think twice about attacking you, especially if that recon, for instance, has marked you and engineers are on the way in force. You then have, for instance, obviously the long distance bolt. So again, as a recon, that would be your cup of tea. But say you could be playing the assault. You might be looking for targets. You might be looking for where the next assault from the enemy might be coming from. You fire a sensor bolt, and oh look, you might have found a few enemies, so you can face that way. You could really easily change the way the classes play in the game just by using the crossbow and the various bolts you get with it. So I can really see the crossbow basically changing the way the game is played, the classes are played. There is a caveat, and I kind of mentioned this. It's only really a one-shot kill up to 15 meters, at least with the standard bolt. And basically it's the same criteria as a sniper rifle, so torso and above, 15 meters, one-shot kill. Anything more than that, you're going to need a follow-up. And as you can expect with a crossbow, having to pull the cord back and then load a new bolt in, yeah, that perhaps isn't the best option. So, as I was saying, knife with a sniper rifle which fires a knife. It really could radically change the way the game plays out, and I can easily see myself as a recon swapping out permanently the tugs for the crossbow. I still get some of the functionality with the sensor bolt, but suddenly I can attack tanks, helicopters, and perhaps be a bit of a menace there. I can silently attack enemies from 10-15 meters, and I really do have to emphasize this, the crossbow is completely silent. All you hear is the thwing of the cord of the string, and then whatever the crossbow bolt hits, and normally it's a scream if you hit someone and kill them. It's quite almost menacing. But anyway, the crossbow really could change things, and it's a lot of fun to use as well, which is obviously the aim of the game. So but no, the crossbow is a really neat weapon. You might kind of go, oh, just the crossbow, why couldn't we have had like 10 more weapons? Well, the crossbow I think makes up for it, especially in how it could change the game. So really, to conclude guys, I am really impressed with Aftermath. You've got a nice variety of maps. The new game mode, being Scavenger, is a really interesting mix of previous Battlefield game modes. You've got your classic game modes in there as well, and the crossbow really does change the game. It's an impressive piece of DLC, and it's going to be very interesting to see how the game plays out in the near future, thanks to this piece of DLC. So anyway guys, that has been my initial impressions of Battlefield 3 Aftermath. I hope you've enjoyed them, and as always guys, thank you so very much for watching. Now if you have any views on Aftermath, you'd like to share any tips or anything like that, or questions, I'll try to answer your questions where I can, simply leave a comment down in the comment section below, and I'd love to see what you guys think as well. If could leave a rating, whatever you believe this video deserves. That'd be fantastic. A like, dislike, whatever you believe this video deserves, that'd be great. And if you want to see some more videos from myself, you can always subscribe. So anyway guys, I've been Chuggy. I hope you've enjoyed the video. I'll see you next time out on the battlefield.